Hello there. Welcome to whatever we're calling this show. Hello there. Welcome back to SiDEQUEST. It's been a bit, but we're back. Unfortunately, Theogek could not join us today, so there's just Arc-Triton 4466 over here, and myself, Sombraptor. Now, before we started this recording, you had an interesting topic you figured you could just bring onto the show. So, what thoughts were you having?
One, we can tell them about what we're going to be doing. So we're going to do an introspection on the Clone Wars, and you guys will be hearing that. That'll be the next episode as we're going to start. We've got a lot of cool people that know stuff about the lore very deeply, and they want to be a part of stuff, and hopefully they want to be a part of stuff. And so we're going to have them here on the show and do an introspection. And so every other episode, it'll be an episode about the Clone Wars, and then we'll go back to just having a live talk show, kind of like what we're doing right now. But yeah, for what today, I really wanted to, because they say it in the movies, and as a kid, I was sitting there and I was watching that, I was like, how does that make any sense? So I believe the quote comes from Mace Windu that says, I believe it's time that we inform the Senate that our ability to use the Force has diminished. And I think Yoda pretty much says, like, only the Dark Lord of the Sith knows that. Nobody else needs to know that. So I always thought that was interesting, because I was like, well, like, what does that mean? Like, you can't use the Force? Like, that's obviously not true. Like, the Jedi aren't disconnected from the Force. They can still use it in attacks and stuff like that, or to manipulate people's minds. Or I guess the more I've learned about Star Wars, and especially from doing the podcast with you, about certain topics, and then going back to KOTOR, is that there's the gift of, like, clairvoyance, so the ability to see the future and foresight and all that kind of stuff, like prophecy. I guess that is more or less what they're talking about. That is what I think.
No, as we were talking about before the show, I believe, it was specifically in reference to their foresight / clairvoyance / ability to, their visions of the future being, like, what was it, like, Yoda, like, the shroud of the dark side has fallen, and it's like, because obviously their capabilities in the Force, in terms of, like, be it in combat or as a defensive, like, there's no evidence of that being diminished, but the obvious implication there is, it's a certain Papa Palps, a certain Mr. Sheev, a certain the Senate, a certain there's so many names. Yeah, what was it? Frank. Yeah, he says, "Your Majesty, I must be Frank." It's like his name is Frank. It's Frank Palpatine. What? No.
That's such a dad.
It is.
That's like,
I love those stupid jokes. So many. But I mean, because it's been a subject of fan debate, like, especially in Revenge of the Sith. The nature of visions in the Force can be like, oh, was Palpatine the one, influencing Anakin's dreams, seeing Padme dying in childbirth? And it's like, oh, was that a self-fulfilling? Sorry, I mean, in the end, it ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy, but was that from a deterministic perspective, or sorry, was it the Force itself, yes, giving Anakin a vision of the future via deterministic, or was it a, because the subject of free will versus determinism, I mean, that's been a theme in mythology for the longest time, and like especially in Greek myth, for example, Oedipus was said, "Oh, you're going to kill your father and marry your mother." It's like, "Oh, that's disgusting, and there's no way I'm going to do that." And by trying to avoid that, he does end up causing it. And then, from a real life perspective, when people debate that, it's like, okay, but without like real life future, like real oracles or time travel, is there really does it really matter? I don't know. So I'm getting a little off track from Star Wars, but
no.
But that's something I think about a lot. It's like people like place a lot of value on that because from going back to the Greek, for example, like my assumption is all those stories about fate, fate being unavoidable and trying to avoid it just brings it about, so you must accept it. It's like, I don't know if that was some sort of I guess an early form of a psyop to assert the influence of the oracles of Delphi or some kind of thing, but assuming they didn't really have supernatural powers, but in a setting like Star Wars, in which the supernatural is just a fact of life, I guess that raises a lot of interesting questions. Not to get all Kreia-y about the nature of the Force, but I mean,
yeah.
Okay, this wasn't where I was going with the conversation originally, but since it's come up
organically, that is how conversations work at tea time.
Of course.
Yes, I hate that about shows. Shows are too slick today. My brother said something about our show. He was like, your show would be a lot better if you guys did takes and stuff like that and had a little bit more scripted. And I was like, well, that's not what the show's about. It's, just a couple of guys or gals or guys and gals or guys and gals in the barn. That's American Dream. Guys and gals in the barn. Anyway, sorry, that's from Bob's Burgers. If you guys, all right, keep going.
Right. No. What I was saying was, I guess that brings up, there's a lot of debates on. If you haven't seen, there's a YouTuber with no username, it's just like all spacebarred out, but he did a phenomenal series on just the philosophy of Star Wars in general, but it started out with just analyzing Kreia from KOTOR 2, and I vehemently disagree with the conclusions he draws at the very end, but I nonetheless I've expressed, I've probably talked about this on this show before, and I certainly have on my own channel, but it's nonetheless, I think, fundamental viewing for someone who wants to start thinking about Star Wars on a deeper level. But his perspective, he views the Force itself as an inherently evil thing because it's, deterministic. But it's from a certain point of view, and his thoughts start to make a lot more sense in that it's obviously coming from a very individualist, Randian, I guess, worldview, which I do not share. I won't disparage him for his views, but it kind of explains a lot of not his uncomfortableness with the thought of a, I guess, higher ideal / plan / because his thoughts are and I guess Kreia's the character. Going back to the character Kreia, she for those who aren't familiar, Kreia is, I think, probably the most well-written character, just turned a that's deconstruction of a setting done right, because she analyzes the nature of that fictional setting as a whole and wants to undo it. Her goal at the end of the day is the death of the Force itself. Debates on free will versus determinism. So her idea, her view, and is that I guess the Force is deterministic, and via the quote unquote will of the Force is a inherently evil thing, which I do not agree with, because at the end of the day, you, assuming you're a person in the setting, you are part of the Force. Your free will is the determinism. Like it's hard to put into words. I'm sorry if I'm rambling weirdly. Like I'm, as I've mentioned multiple times on here before, I'm working on my own video analyzing Star Wars philosophy, and it's but I just
go into
sorry, what
more? What is your understanding of determinism?
Determinism is the thought that everything is preordained, that there is no free will of sorts. Like to some that's a comforting thought, to others that's a horrific even going in real life, like people say it's like, oh well, something is just God's will, or something is just
destiny.
Destiny. Basically, determinism is just the application of the concept of destiny, as opposed to. But so going back to the thing from before was, yes, in a real life context in which, to my knowledge, nobody has traveled forward and backward through time, and there have been no accurate psychic. I mean, well, oh boy, here come the conspiracy theorists to say no, with the CIA experiments in the 50s. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Wow,
Orson Welles predict World War II.
No, of course there have been predictions or whatever, but I mean, like,
what's wrong with that?
People worrying about free will versus determinism, I don't find awful.
I think they exist one in the same, but that's also at a different theological level than
exactly.
Maybe Star Wars related, but no, I mean, I think free will and destiny are, you have the free will, but isn't that funny that you're destined to do one thing or another, as long as you're free will, but that you can always change. That's the thing, is if you're in that zone of, well, I'm not dead yet, so my destiny hasn't been determined, you still have the free will to choose but then some people use destiny as the way of escape from free will. You're like, well, I am who I am. This is just how it is. And so I'm going to go on to be this person. Well, you already formed your destiny then. So free will exists with destiny. I see it that way. But
That's very well put.
Well, but I also, some people don't agree with that. But anyway, okay, so real quick then. So if it wasn't affecting them through like their ability to like train Jedi, but really I think it was. So if you don't, and I wonder when they finally started to realize, like, we can't use the Force to see clearly about the future anymore, because I know that like during the KOTOR comics, there's like, that's the whole entire setup, is they have a vision about Zane and his group, and that somebody within that, and they end up propelling that because Zane ends up becoming that one guy, and because they kill all the apprentices, and he's, in the kind of shape that he is, messing up all the time. He's late to the dinner party, and bam, 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 one thing to the next. So I wonder, like, when did the Jedi Council, and it was obviously the High Council, because they're not, like, I don't think they're saying this to the Padawans, like, by the way, we can't, so that's pretty messed up. So you're training, like, so was it like for years, or was it like within just the time period of basically from the Battle of Naboo onward? Like then you start to Palpatine grows in his power, whatever. I don't know. I wonder at what point did they finally like, oh, crud, like we can't tell what's going on anymore. And so then you're training Jedi, and they don't even understand how to be conduits or very good conduits to the Force as far as like connecting to. I see using the power. It's more of a dark side way of things. I see. I mean, I don't know, but if I was to get
dark side,
more dark side teaching, because think about it. Like when I think about like Serenity and the teaching, like if you think about like somebody like Luke Skywalker, like I feel like before he became connected in the Force, he was connected in combat. So his abilities to, and I think that shows up too in his character, right? So the time that he shows up in Return of the Jedi, he's in all black, right? He start off as the White Knight, young kid.
Oh, I love that bit of just that little bit of just costume. It's like, whoa, you see him appear in Return of the Jedi. What's the first thing he does? He force chokes those Gamorreans. You're like, whoa, has he accepted that, Vader's is he following in his footsteps? What? Oh my God. But then finally, once he rejects the Emperor, you see like the inner part of his like coat pocket or so, or whatever, like come up, and you see that inside it was white all along, and it's like, oh, it's like poetry. It rips.
Easy. You're gonna get copyright
so simple,
from George.
But so brilliant. Like, I guess that's Star Wars in a nutshell, right? Like, take all these simple mythological elements and add but keep the depth behind it. It's like, I love it.
Well, then go on to. I want to keep going with this.
Right. Sorry, we keep going back from your original topic. Yes.
No. I mean, that's the whole point. Is that you see something, you're like, well, this makes sense with this, and this makes sense with this, and then we're recording it, so it gets all mapped out. It's like the expanded universe that everybody wants to put together with Disney and all the different video streaming platforms. anyway, let's get off that. No. Okay.
The diminishing use of the Force.
The dark, right? You're basically training these Force users in more or less just how to be combatants. You're not, because like when you see Luke in his progression, I feel like when you saw him in The Mandalorian, he was more spiritual, kind of like it seemed like he had found his peace or his calling, and he had gone through this great battle of his life and everything, and had to deal with the death of his father. So he's more of in a Zen state. But I feel like if the Jedi were training that to people to the beginning, you would say, why did they, like, is it because of pride? Like, eventually at a point they became so prideful and so caught up in the temple, and they're...
Okay, you're gonna hate this, but I want to quickly address the other thing with Luke now.
Okay.
We'll go back, I swear. No, but something that does irk me a little bit is compared to his previous, expanded universe portrayal. Luke, as seen in the new Disney, his ultimatum to Grogu felt very out of it's something the old Jedi would do, like, and which goes against like the ultimate moral of Return of the Jedi, because the concept of attachment. That's the thing. This is in like every single Star Wars video essay about but whatever. But to summarize, with the old Jedi Order, they felt like a lot of Buddhist sects, that attachment to, be it to just like worldly things, or rather I guess some sort of ascetic sects is the what leads to the dark side in a way. But and in a lot of ways that is, I guess, unattachment is, but the thing is with Luke, he was the one who found the balance. He didn't have the selfish attachment in the way that Anakin did, the possessiveness that Anakin felt toward Padme. No, he had a truly altruistic attachment to he refused to give up on his father. He said, no, I know you can be saved, and to see him tell Grogu, you have to choose between pursuing the Jedi way or staying with your father, and it's like, bro, what did you do? So I don't know, like, I don't know if that's meant to have like more cohesion in story. Like, the new Jedi Orders is, at least the one I knew from the old EU, you know, was meant to be a little philosophically different, to have found that different balance. Because even in, you know, in the real story, there's a tale of when Siddhartha Gautama, not yet known as the Buddha, was, you know, traveling the land, listening to different schools of thought and whatever. One time he came across a group of ascetics who had forsaken everything. Because by this time he had already, you know, learned about, okay, don't be greedy, don't be attached to things. But so he met these monks who spent all day meditating, only eating whatever the wind blew into their mouths. And so he stayed with them for weeks and whatever, and by the end he was so weak he couldn't do anything. So, you know, even though, yes, in Buddhism the concept is, yes, let go of earthly attachments in your to achieve, you know, enlightenment and whatever, but there is a balance to it, because you do need that small little bit of selfishness, aka, I guess, yes, there's a story. It's often just called the not too much, not too little story. So, yeah, contrary to popular belief, the Buddha did not advocate for pure asceticism, aka how the old Jedi were, or at least in theory. And I would in fact argue that I would say that the moral of that story is that the ascetics had actually become attached to non-attachment, which is think about that. That's going to be a little bit of a mind flurry.
No, it's you become so steeped in one way that you are totally unable to comprehend anything else, and so by theory you become the very thing that you said you weren't going to become.
Precisely.
Because you're not even... I think it's even more...
Not out of any form of maliciousness or anything. I feel that in a lot of ways, yes, the old Jedi Order parallels the ascetic order that the Buddha encountered. And I'd say that in this scenario, Luke would be the Buddha who found the I guess, true middle way, or whatever. I guess in China they would call it the Tao. In Japan it would be Zen.
I see it from a writing standpoint when you talk about, because I just see the flow of events. So that's Grogu's his first student, right? So Luke coming off of being who he was. Now remember, he didn't have the normal Padawan upbringing. So imagine him thinking, well, I've got to start the first school of Jedi. The first thing he's probably doing is using the ancient text that he found in Yoda's hut. And so the next thing you know, he can repeat that. And so he fails with Grogu, and then he probably realizes that it's an old wineskin. Like, you got to get rid of it. It's time to have a new wineskin to fill it with new wine and to do it a new way. And that's where you get in the EU and, you know, stuff with the solos and everything, is he more or less repeated his own process. He didn't try something that had been done and forgotten and doesn't work anymore. He just went back to what worked for him. And then it ended up working on a bigger scale. But then it also kind of didn't, because you got to remember all the stuff that happens with Mr. Ben, or as far as even like the stuff that's in the Disney canon, like that's still, it kind of leads to him like losing control. That the new Jedi weren't as sturdy as the old Jedi. So, and in reality, I think maybe he should have just stuck with it. You know, you got to remember, Grogu had already been in that and had seen the light and had been repressed and all this kind of stuff. So Grogu, I felt, was going to be a failed apprentice anyway. He was a Mandalorian at the end of that. And so he should have just kept going. He should have just continued to go back to the old ways and build the order like that, and maybe it would have, taken a bit.
That's the thing. He shouldn't be making the same mistakes. He should have,
I don't think devotion that they had, like, because certainly going back to the very beginning of the Jedi Order, like, it would have been that way.
I
Like,
mean, obviously, Anakin's failings were his own, but at the end, but a big part of that was.
I think Qui-Gon was so influenced by this desire to move the ball that he was willing to go out on a limb and believe that Anakin, and it just so happened that Anakin was. But I think that's more like the Force prophecy kind of thing, right? Like you made your own prophecy, and so it wasn't your destiny, but you made it your destiny. So whereas there might have been another champion that comes down the line that wasn't who Qui-Gon would. Qui-Gon wanted to find Anakin. He wanted to find an answer. He wanted to, get rid of the hidden Sith and all this kind of stuff and find the guy who's going to bring balance, because he was afraid. Certainly, and they show that even in the stuff with the Tales of the Jedi? I can't remember the stuff that came out recently. Is that Tales of the Jedi? Help me out here.
Yes, the animated shorts, yes.
I know that's not the actual Tales of the Jedi that you're thinking about from, Legends. But
yes, two entirely separate things with the same title and logo, which is like, what? Okay.
Well, they made it obvious that in that show that, what's his name? Dooku was definitely concerned with stuff, and so he would have been influencing Qui-Gon in the same way, and that goes on showing, Qui-Gon's very brash and, wanting to get to the bottom of things, doesn't take orders from people, all of this kind of stuff. Qui-Gon was looking. Qui-Gon knew he had one life, and that if he could be the one to find it, I'm sure he had some kind of self-belief about that. And so when you run across Anakin, destiny is destiny. This guy has a midichlorian count. He's the, chosen one, blah, 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 blah. He just ran him right through. And then, of course, that's where Palpatine steps in and, it just goes from there. Yeah. So I think they forced that destiny. I think really Luke is the balance. I think that because...
Yes, my point exactly.
Oh, there you go. Anyway, well, you could go into a whole other show about that one. Let's get on to the question out of nowhere.
Yes.
Question.
Start wrapping this up, but all right. Yes. Question out of nowhere. Let's go.
Well, if we got to wrap it up, we can save this.
No. Go on.
Oh, well, you're doing it for the audience, then. So here's what it is: how many secret apprentices did the Sith Lords have during the period of the Rule of Two? So,
well, yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, yes.
And what constitutes an assassin? Well, and what constitutes an assassin and an apprentice? So you had an apprentice, and then there were assassins. So what's the difference?
Right. So, yes, in numerous cases, there were. In fact, I'd say it was more uncommon for Sith apprentices during the Rule of Two to not have secret apprentices of their own, because secret or not, because let's see, even as far as the first with Darth Zana, she had what's his name, Mikitachi, I think, but and then of course, when it comes to Plagueis and Sidious, their ideas were unorthodox because they felt like they had already reached the point of the culmination, and they were like, well, we're gonna go ahead and we're the ones who are gonna achieve the title of Sithati, become true immortals and whatever, so we can go ahead and discard with that. So that was why Sidious started his apprentice and even named him Darth with Maul, and Plagueis didn't find that sus because he was that arrogant, I suppose. But then, of course, then later with Dooku, he had, of course, Asajj Ventress. In the EU, there were the other dark acolytes, but they weren't his proper apprentices as a sort. But so yes, there is a. I mean, even the term Sith has varied in definition throughout the years. It can either mean, the original red Sith species, or is it the Order itself? Is it the government of the Sith? Is it just the true Dark Lords, the two of the rule of two? So it is, yes, more or less an arbitrary distinction. There have been some online say, so a true Sith, has to be named Darth, and has been taught more advanced techniques in the use of the dark side. Alas, and then there's Dooku had Ventress, and then Vader, of course, had Starkiller. Love Starkiller. Sam Witwer. God tier. Because even during Imperial times there were, of course, the Inquisitors, and there are a number, the Shadow Guards, the what was it, the Zeta Sentinels, whatever. There were more Darksiders running around in that time period than you might think. Under Papa Palps, but yes, not considered true quote-unquote Sith.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I don't think that they were, so that's what I'm saying. I think the Rule of Two is a bunch of, because really they didn't even hold to it, truthfully. If you can't, they couldn't have enough self-belief in themselves to defeat their master. They always had to think, I have to have somebody else to go and help me defeat my master. I have to use somebody else.
Well, it's not that. It's more. I don't think they ever had them.
Because you don't see Padawans.
With the exception of
Padawans.
Ventress getting Savage to help her against Dooku. There's no. It's not really and of course Vader training Starkiller. Generally, the idea was, I'm gonna go behind my master's back and act as if I've already achieved the status of master.
Vader had that as a double thing. He was either gonna win with Starkiller and kill Palpatine, or he was going to use Starkiller to get Palpatine's job done, so they didn't have to do all that work.
Exactly.
It was literally about that. Literally, Vader doesn't want to put himself at risk to go die because Vader knows that he's not the macho man that he should be. And so, instead of being Randy Savage, he's going to have him do all the dirty work.
Sorry, I had to. Every time. Oh, you know what? I'm going to pull up on screen Macho Mando Randy Savage, who I met at this con.
Okay, well, you're saying it's not that. I mean, it is, obviously. I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm sick today. That is it. Like, they can't defeat their master in their mind because they know that their master is going to sacrifice them at some point. Unlike with the Jedi's relationship with their master is totally different. So, when an apprentice overtakes their master, which you don't have to kill your master to outdo your master. Like Obi-Wan didn't have to kill his master to outdo him; he just had to outlive him, or rather, just surpass him in ability. Which Obi-Wan, by all accounts I've heard, was a trash Jedi. Like in the very beginning, he was the least likely in his class. He was a Zane Carrot kind of guy, and he ends up becoming one of the most powerful Jedi of all time. Those are kind of good stories, and
everybody loves an underdog story.
Well, that's why I don't think the Rule of Two works. I think the Rule of Two is just a thing, another way to just kind of take the crown of authority and just take it for yourself, which is what. Was it Bane? Bane did it? Yeah. I mean, that's what Bane did.
Revan's philosophy initially.
It's just his other way to make his own empire and enslave every other Sith that would come underneath of him and to start his own dynasty. And I mean, in reality, it was no more successful because it wasn't until Plagueis that stuff actually turned around. What were the Sith up until Plagueis? Because they weren't anything, because Plagueis found Palpatine. And Palpatine's the real guy that did it all. So, really, the Sith were... I don't really see how it helped them at all. I think that it was just another power grab, and then they just went on destroying each other and living in the shadows instead of actually, developing themselves like they could have. And that's all from greed. It's greed. screwed at the end of the day.
I mean, that's one of the cores of the dark side.
I know, but the greed, that's my... Well, you're right. I guess I'm kind of just punching thin air.
Well, we are quite over time,
Yes.
but you know what? This was a good conversation, so I don't mind that whatsoever.
Well, I've got
Huh?
But let's sign it off. Guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please drop a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Please, it helps us out. And the like button.
No. Dislike this video, delete a comment, and unsubscribe. So.
Well, hey, that's what some... hey, buddy, I'm serious. Like, I've just had, like... It wasn't even, like, threatening. I just said, like, challenge accepted. This was an awesome video or something like that. And you get deleted. And you're like, oh, wow, editing's pretty... Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yep. All right. Well, the free speech, forget about that. Anyway, live free speech. Viva la revolution. All that kind of stuff.
All right. Thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. And, as always, may the Force be with you.